Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin.
Officials have declared a state of emergency. Everybody they kill gets up and kills. Residents are advised to find a safe place and stay there.
Execute Code Red.
The Doomsday Machine.
We celebrate our Independence Day.
That's right, sound the alarm. The Spookshow Summer Disaster has begun. I'm Josh. I'm joined here with Donnie.
Yo.
And the Professor Smoke.
What's up?
Godzilla must have taken out Will because he's not here with us. He must have been in Tokyo in 1956. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
But Will's not here. He's on assignment, so it's just the three of us. But yeah, we're here this week to kick off the Spookshow Summer Disaster. Now, as we've explained on the last month or so. But if you haven't been listening over the last month or so, basically the whole premise of what we're going to be doing, really kind of officially starting here all summer long, it's called the Spookshow Summer Disaster series. But basically we're going to be doing disastrous movies, like not necessarily like natural disasters like Twister and stuff like that, the ones you would think of right away, but like things that, like, if it happened in real life, would absolutely be a disaster. Now we've got some of that stuff sprinkled in. But we're also like, we got alien invasion, monster invasion, kaiju fights. The list goes on and on. Post-apocalyptic shit, all kinds of stuff. And not just here on the podcast either. We're going across the whole Spook Show universe. It's creeping over to our YouTube channel as well. And we're going to have some cool Video Vortex crossover and Grindhouse Gutter crossover.
Oh yeah,
with the series too. So we got lots of cool stuff planned out. We explained it all last week. Hopefully you listened to the preview episode. That really kind of laid pretty much everything out on the table there for you. But if not, go back and check it out.
I mean, definitely has a great lineup coming up. It should be a really fun summer. And
we're starting it here today with my choice, because we're still going to have the same rotation of all of us picking our movies and everything. It was my turn on the rotation, so we're going to start with my choice. Godzilla, King of the Monsters from 1956. Smoke, help me explain this. Like, this is kind of what started Godzilla, but not really, right? This is a different version of what started Godzilla, right?
Yeah, and kaiju as a genre, I guess you could say. But yeah, it started in 1954 with Toho releasing the original Godzilla under the Japanese title Gojira, which there's a band called Gojira, not to be confused.
Yeah.
But and then they released it in 54 under that title, and it did well in Japan and got picked up for distribution in 1955, I believe. And then they deal with Toho to do a so-called, Americanized version, basically where they used Raymond Burr and called it Godzilla, and that came out in 1956.
Yeah, and then basically this becomes an American/Japanese production on this one, and we'll explain it a little further here in just a minute. But is this obviously isn't the first time I've seen this. I've seen this, good Lord, probably a dozen times throughout my life. I'm sure it's similar for you, right, Smoke?
Yeah, I've seen this version that we're watching, the Raymond Burr 1956 version, many times. The Japanese version, I probably didn't see until they finally put out probably the DVD, the whatever point the DVD came out, well before the Criterion release that's out there now. There was one put out with the Japanese cut back when DVD was in its infancy, I guess. And that was when I first saw it. It's probably 98, 99 or so. And I've seen it a couple times since as well.
Yeah, well, I've seen the original Godzilla. This was the first time I've seen this version. I think I watched the remake.
Which one? You talking about the one from like the late 90s, like 98 or whatever? That one? Or the one like from 5 years ago?
Like 2019, 2018, that one. Yeah, well, King of the Monsters.
There's literally been, Smoke, probably 30, 40 Godzilla movies at this point. There's been a ton.
It's been a lot.
Even Toho kind of did their own sort of remake in 1985 with Godzilla 1985. Remember? So that was kind of like taking Godzilla back to his roots. They had been all the kaiju monster fests up to that point. Then in 85, they decided, or maybe in 84, but decided to come out with Godzilla 1985 and sort of just throw all the monsters out again and get just back to Godzilla destroying cities and whatnot. And then you had the 1998 Matthew Broderick Godzilla remake, right? And then the more recent ones, like Donnie mentioned.
Yeah, there's been a ton, and really, look, I think this is a good movie to start this Summer Disaster series off with because, it's a big monster movie. Arguably the most popular monster outside of maybe King Kong is Godzilla. It's him in all of his glory, just mowing down Tokyo. Just the generic story of Godzilla and all these kaiju monsters. You've got it right here. So I think it's a good place to start. But I will say that we could probably do an entire year of nothing but Godzilla movies and maybe crossing over and, just literally like never stop. There's so many of these damn movies, but this is one of the ones that, really started it and probably really the one movie that really kicked it off here in the U.S. and made it so popular for as long as it was for like the following 20 years after that. Right. So, but we'll get a little bit deeper into it here in just a second, but of course we want to get some of the other stuff off the table first. We want to remind you to go check out aaspookshow.com. We call that the center of the Spook Show universe, where you can go to our YouTube channel from there, check out all of our series that we just talked about a second ago. And also we've got all of our past podcast episodes archived from there. And of course that will also lead you to our Patreon page, patreon.com/aaspookshow, where you get monthly series, bonus podcast, including Spook Show Rewind and Crapster Piece Theater every month. So lots of cool stuff to check out over there. We encourage it. So without any further build-up, we'll go and toss to a trailer for Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters, alive, surging up from the depths of the sea on a tidal wave of terror to wreak vengeance on mankind.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters, it's alive.
A gigantic beast,
stalking the earth, crushing all before it.
in a cyclonic cavalcade of electrifying horror.
Raging through the streets on a rampage of total destruction.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters,
Incredible titan of terror.
wiping out a city of 6 million in a holocaust of flame.
Jet planes cannot destroy it.
Bombs cannot kill it.
All modern weapons fail.
Is this the end of our civilization?
Can the scientists of the world find a way to stop this creature?
For the answer, see Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
You may wish to deny it, but your eyes tell you it's true.
A tale to stun the mind.
More fantastic than any ever written by Jules Verne.
More terrifying than any ever shown on the screen.
Awesome.
Incredible.
Unbelievable.
A story beyond your wildest dreams.
Dynamic violence.
Savage action.
Spectacular thrills.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Fantastic beyond comprehension.
Gripping beyond compare.
Astounding beyond belief.
The mightiest monster of them all.
See Godzilla,
King of the Monsters.
All right, there you go. There's the trailer for that. So some of the background information here. Now, I found a few other titles. One was is in some places it's just known as, in some other countries, this one is just known as Godzilla. But there were two working titles that I could find for this movie. One was Godzilla the Sea Beast, and Godzilla the Sea Monster.
Yeah,
now, apparently they considered either one of those, for the release title, but then they just decided to go with King of the Monsters! ! I guess to kind of hype people up, right? I'm sure they probably wanted to draw some natural comparison to King Kong at the time, right? Wouldn't you think? I mean, you're 20. How many years removed are you at this point? 20, 25 years removed from King Kong, but
yeah, 33, I'm pretty sure, for King Kong.
Yeah, so I'm sure even at this point, you would want to draw some comparison to that. Like, well, if you liked King Kong, check this out. Godzilla, he's the fucking king of the monsters, So I'm sure that brought a few extra butts, right? You would think.
True, yeah. And also, I mean, it wasn't too many years before this movie that, well, I think it was 1953 that The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms came out. That movie was an American film. It was Ray Harryhausen did the effects for it. Giant monster attacking a city type thing. And that was kind of the inspiration for the Japanese to write and make Godzilla. 1954. So it was and some inspirations there, but I don't, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms did well enough, I'm sure. Whether it was a blockbuster for the time, probably not, but it wasn't till, Godzilla came out that the giant monster thing really really took off and came into its own, I guess.
I couldn't find any definitive numbers on how much this movie made, but I did find like the box office, at least as far as in U.S. rentals, was $2 million. So I guess, that would be the number. It's harder when you're talking about an older movie like this, to pull down definitive numbers and anything like. Usually you'll find tickets sold and stuff like that, and I don't really necessarily even see that. So
they weren't really doing them very well back then, right?
Yeah.
As far as the box office, as they would later on in years, I guess, as far as keeping up with that type of thing.
Yeah, if you want to compare like $2 million in 1956 dollars to today, it's a little over 22 million.
Yeah, and that's off of an estimated budget that I found of $650,000. So I'm sure most of that was just all the stuff that they had all the effort they had to put into, reshooting the stuff with Raymond Burr and then making it a cohesive story, with the footage from the original Toho movie. It's really interesting too, the way they put this together.
True.
It debuted April 4th, 1956 in New York City, and then it was released wide April 27th of 1956. It was, of course, produced by Toho Company Limited, and here in the U.S., the U.S. production side of it was Jewel Enterprises, Inc., and then it was distributed by a newly formed company, Trans World Releasing Corp., here in the United States, and then, of course, over in Japan, it was distributed by Toho. This film is not rated, and it has a total runtime of 1 hour and 20 minutes, and on IMDb, it's listed as an action/horror/sci-fi. Really, the one star of the movie, at least in this one, not comparing it to the original Godzilla, is Raymond Burr, who, by the way, plays the part of Steve Martin.
I mean, yeah, back then there was no.
No, there was no Steve Martin. Yeah. It also stars Takashi Shimura as Dr. Yaman, Momoka Kochi as Emiko, and Akira Takarada as Ogata. And also, the guy with the eye patch, Dr. Serizawa, that was played by Akihiko Harada. I almost made it through all those without fucking them up. Akihiko Harada. Smoke, what would most people know Raymond Burr from?
What was shit?
Matlock.
No, that's pretty close. Perry Mason. Yep. And also, he had like another one. It was basically the same thing, except he was in a wheelchair, right? Wasn't it Ironsides or something like that?
I could not come up with the Perry Mason name. It was in my head, but I couldn't come up with it.
Come on, man. Come on. We're counting on you. You're supposed to be the unlimited fount of random pop culture knowledge. That's a softball, dude. But yes. Years later, he would most famously be known as Perry Mason. In that show, I don't know how long that show ran, but it had to have been like a fucking decade. I know there's a billion episodes that still get replayed in syndication, even in reruns, even up to this day. So that's what mostly was known for. But basically, I guess he was a recognizable face. And also, I read somewhere where like he basically did his part in this movie in a day. Now, some reports you see it took 5 to 6 days, but apparently in some interview he claims he did everything in one single day, 24 hours. So I don't know if that's what's true there or not, but I could believe it as much as like, all right, this movie is shot. Really, this is more of an editing type of thing, right? So we just need to get in a soundstage and shoot your parts where it makes it look like you're here, So I could believe that they did that in one day. That's the hilarious part too, is how they interspersed him into this thing. Especially knowing that there was another movie that had a lot of completely different plot lines going. And once you see that one, you kind of can't unsee it when you sit down and watch this one. And the way they married the two together by basically him just being at the right place at the right time at all times, Then they just grabbed a handful of other Japanese American actors or something, stood him in front of them like to make him look like, he's part of the media scrum.
Yeah.
And then he's always just standing there in the background smoking a pipe or staring. Just
blank staring, just calm, just doesn't really react much.
Really, that's about all I had as far as like the background stuff. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to point out before we start digging into it?
Yeah, I read that this was Spielberg's favorite Godzilla movie.
I could see that because it's probably the first one I would imagine that he saw.
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah, probably.
This is probably the one that introduced everybody to it. So,
and also Godzilla's Roar was made they dragged a resin-coated leather glove up and down like a cello, and then just slowed it down.
Yeah.
It works, I guess.
That is some that's some ingenuity, right? That's some old school ingenuity right there.
Oh, yeah.
Which they had, I mean, obviously you watch this, you can see it. They had a lot of that going on here because obviously there's no such thing as what did they say he was, 40 foot? No.
Thing is, yeah,
foot?
like.
What did they say? He was 400 foot? I'm blanking now.
Okay, so it actually, in the premise, or actually I think in the premise, it says 400 feet.
Okay, yeah.
Like 400 foot tall. But when he's describing Godzilla, he says, he's about 30 foot tall.
Okay.
But clearly he's bigger than these, these big ass buildings.
They probably didn't have skyscrapers like they did many years later in Tokyo, but there were a lot of big buildings in Tokyo, and this thing towered over everything. Yeah. What I mean, like, as far as the ingenuity wise, like, clearly there's no such thing as this massive beast, so they had to do the scale thing, right? It's clearly just a dude in a suit walking around a city to scale, right? But some of it, it's real. Overall, I'm going to say it's impressive. The look of it's very impressive, but the some of it was not. You know what I mean? Like some of it you could clearly tell it was just toys. You know?
Yeah.
The helicopter comes to mind when the storm hits and the helicopter gets rolled. And then there's another one where I think it's a fire truck or something going down the road, and it looks like here's some file footage of a fire truck going down the road, and then it cuts to like a toy-sized truck with like some clay men on the side of it, just and then it flips over.
Meh,
you know. But put it in context, 1956, right? You know, so you can forgive it.
Plus, I mean, it was. I don't know if it was the first. It was the first in Japan, I believe, of like the giant monster, a man being in the suit rather than doing stop motion, because they had wanted to do stop motion, but it would have been too expensive to do it that way. And I know in America, most, if not all, giant monster movies that have been made, including King Kong, were stop motion. Ray Harryhausen being a big part of that. But yeah, they went for the man in the suit in this one, and I think they said the suit weighed 200. The first suit was 230 pounds, and the actor, of course, had a hard time moving in it.
Yeah, well,
then it was 200 pounds.
I failed to mention, I believe there were two guys that played Godzilla in the movie, or at least that's what I see here. I could be, correct me if I'm wrong out there, Spookshow Universe. Some big Godzilla fans out there might know technically it was this guy and this guy, but I've got two names: Haruo Nakajima and Katsumi Tezuka.
What is it? Hey, white buttercup, popcorn, add some butter to hot popcorn. Mix it up, wrap it up, buttercup is born.
It's delicious.
So nutritious.
It's a taste delight.
It's so munchy,
crisp and crunchy.
You'll enjoy each bite. Eat butter-drenched buttercup, popcorn at its best.
Served in a king-size cup.
It beats all the rest.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So hopped on over to audible.com and just typed in Godzilla to see what would pop up. And surprisingly, not as much as I thought would pop up. I mean, there's a number of results, but just not as much stuff into the deep backgrounds and whatnot of Godzilla than I thought we'd find. We've got Godzilla King of the Monsters, which is the official movie novelization, not of this one, but the remake, from a few years ago, Godzilla King of the Monsters. That is by Greg Keyes, and that one's right at 9 hours long. Let's see, we've got Godzilla vs. Kong, the official movie novelization of that one by Greg Keyes. That one is 10.5 hours long. I'll scroll down a little bit here, see what else pops up. I mean, not much. I'm kind of surprised that there's not as much. A lot of other podcasts and stuff like that dedicated to Godzilla. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there might be something here I'm missing, but yeah, I'm kind of surprised that there's not more than that. But if either of those things floats your boat, and maybe you can go over to Audible and search with different parameters and find more things to do with Godzilla than I just did. But if you want to do that, and of course, if any of that stuff interests you, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audio book. So I'm going to hop on over to IMDb and click on plot summary for this one and see what we got. Well, yeah, we got a few here, Donnie. I know you were worried, so
yeah.
I'm not going to read all these because there's, I'll read the shortest one and the longest one. How about that?
Rough.
We got the shortest one, and this is pretty simple. A 400-foot, 122-meter dinosaur-like beast, awoken from undersea hibernation off the Japanese coast by atomic bomb testing, attacks Tokyo. So that's the short one. Here's the long one. This was submitted by Brian Washington over on IMDb. American reporter Steve Martin, on his way to Cairo for an assignment, has a stopover in Tokyo. During the layover, he decides to visit his old friend, Dr. Daisuke Serizawa. However, the night before he landed, his plane passed over an area where a ship suddenly exploded and caught fire, killing all hands. Martin is then questioned by the authorities, and he tells them he saw nothing. After 7 more ships suddenly disappear, Martin decides to stay in Japan to see what's going on. He and policeman Tomo Iwanaga, knew I'd fuck it up eventually. Tomo Iwanaga then go to Odo Island, which is close to where many of the ships were destroyed. While there, they are caught in a typhoon, and during the storm, something comes ashore and kills several of the inhabitants and destroys several buildings. A few days later, a scientific expedition led by paleontologist Dr. Kyo Yamane arrives on the island, and they are horrified to find a giant monster the natives call Godzilla. Now Japan and the world wait to see what horrors this monster will bring. I mean, that's a pretty simple explanation because that's exactly what the movie is. Now, of course, there's subtle nuances going on here, right? There's a story, but essentially it's something awakens this giant sea beast. It comes out of the water and eventually fucks Tokyo up, right? And then there's a whole story about how they take them down. So, yeah, where do you want to start?
I mean, the beginning, might as well. It's basically, and to me, this was one of the funniest parts, actually, where he wakes Steve Martin, wakes up in the pile of rubble. He's all bloody. He tries to get up, and then he just collapses and falls on his face.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh.
I think it was a pretty good setup, though. Like, they did the old, like, you kind of see the end of the story and then swing back around, like, let's see how we got here kind of thing. Although, as you come to find out a little later on, it's not, you don't necessarily see the end. You kind of see the setup to the end. Did you notice, and I put this in my notes, at some points, Steve seems to understand Japanese perfectly, and then other times seems to be completely clueless about what they're saying. Like, it would seem sometimes like somebody is talking to him, and he's like, he's kind of shaking his head and he's taking notes. And then the next scene, it cuts over to him, and he's standing next to, was it Iwagama or whatever, that guy that kind of helps interpret things for him, that translates it. And he just kind of looks over at him like, what did he say? And then the guy has to repeat it. It's just kind of inconsistent logic as far as Steve is concerned, right?
Oh, yeah. And that was, that kind of, it doesn't really mesh well. I don't know.
You mean his scenes with the rest of the movie, or? So
yeah. For the most part, for me, it kind of takes me out of it because seeing the original Japanese Godzilla, this is it, but it's just thrown in with Raymond Burr.
I think at its core, you're getting the same movie, although there are a lot of differences in the sense of, like, the original was really leaning into the American and Russian, like, hydrogen bomb testing and stuff, like off the Sea of Japan, and this is what has fucked up their environment and stuff like that. They really leaned into that aspect of it, whereas in this version, they kind of cut all that out. Like, there was, I guess they didn't feel it necessary, or maybe they didn't want to get into it, make it, people uncomfortable with the politicization, however you say it, of the matter, right? So they're just like, let's just skip all over that and just throw Raymond Burr in there, Plus, foreign films weren't really a thing. I mean, obviously they existed, but, like, here in the U.S., you didn't watch foreign films back then.
Not as a rule. I think, usually, and if they were, it was dubbed. Yeah, they would bring them here and dub them like they did this one. There wasn't a thing of I guess, demand outside of maybe whatever art house type cinemas there were at the time for
probably not many
foreign uncut films.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Like, probably not many people here in the United States would have seen that original Godzilla 2 years prior, say with subtitles or something like that, or if you understood Japanese, but you wouldn't have seen that. So like, they're like, yeah, let's just leave all that shit out. Plus, too, you got to think like, this is how many years removed from World War II is this? It's not, what, 10 years or less?
Yeah.
Less?
Well, for the original came out in 1954, it was 9 years because, well, World War II ended in 1945. So, yeah, 9 years from when the Japanese Gojira came out, and then 12, because it was 2 years later.
Yeah,
so
2 years.
11 years.
11 years after World War II. I mean, shit still had to be kind of fresh here, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's not dwell on all that stuff too much. Let's just.
One other interesting note to make, and I haven't seen an image of it. I don't know if there is an image that exists, but apparently one of the original Godzilla head designs was like a mushroom cloud. Like his head was shaped like a mushroom cloud. But I have not seen any pictures of that. It'd be interesting to see if there are any.
That would have been funny, considering what it came out to be.
On the nose.
I love the part when Godzilla finally first appears. Like, there's hints of something going on, out in the ocean and stuff like that. But when you really see Godzilla for the first time is when they go to Odo Island. What, an alarm sounds or something, and everybody's like, run to the hills. They go up the hill, and fucking Godzilla's up there like, ah! And they have to run back down the hill.
That was a cool reveal. I remember the first time I ever saw the Godzilla movie or whatever. That was like, I thought it was a cool reveal of the monster. I thought they shot it well to make it look like, that this man in a suit is a giant monster.
Yeah. I do love that it's like the typical old 50s movie reveal, though, of like him over a hill. Like, peekaboo! Ah!
And they actually do say each year the island people would send out a young girl on a raft to him as a sacrifice. Yeah. I'm like, what?
That was to satiate the beast. Just
send
a virgin out on a raft. Yeah, we'll be all right. We'll all live.
1 year they don't send a girl out on a raft.
Yep. See, that's where they fucked up. It's not all the hydrogen bomb testing by other countries out in their ocean. No, it was they failed to sacrifice a young girl on the raft this year. I like because remember, he comes to Tokyo twice. He kind of shows up, says, I'm here, motherfucker, fucks some stuff up, and then leaves. And then eventually he comes back for real and raises hell. But the first time when the train runs into his foot or something, the toy train, that was where the special effects gap comes in. That was another one of those scenes, like the helicopter and all that shit, but with the train. But it goes to Steve again, over in the corner watching this calmly, like a fucking light rail train or something, like an above ground subway train type of deal. Runs into Godzilla, gets tore all to hell. Hundreds of people probably just died right in front of him, and it cuts to Steve, and he's just calmly like staring down at it, like
just looking.
I mean, I guess what else can you do, right? A 400-foot lizard beast is in front of you, like. I guess you could scream and run the other way or just die on the spot of a heart attack because you just saw a goddamn monster. But no, he just stands there like a fucking statue and just, Can somebody hand me my pipe, please? Iwagama, get on that. So their defense for when like Godzilla's coming back, we need to be ready. They're just like, these power lines will take them out. Do we have to do anything? No, not really. The whole island is surrounded by these power lines. We'll be good. It's like some imaginary voltage, it's got 500,000 volts.
Well, that's actually, and it's kind of funny you bring that up. In the original version of Godzilla, they say that I guess the wall is like 50,000 volts, but the director, and it's I think it was the director mentioned that we need to increase that voltage, like say it's 300,000 or 500,000 volts or whatever it was.
You mean the American director? Because there's two directors. Yeah. I failed to mention their names. The original director was Ishirô Honda. That was the original Godzilla director. This director for this one was Terry O. Morse. So I'm assuming you're talking about Morse.
Yeah, I'm talking about Morse. Yeah, O. Morse. So yeah, he had actually said, nobody's going to believe that 50,000 volts is going to take down Godzilla. Or at least make it a little bit more believable
make it seem like a threat.
Yeah. 300,000
as opposed to the non-threat that it actually was, because Godzilla rolls up and says, "Fuck your power lines," and just like kicks them over and then comes in anyways. They're like, "My God, Tokyo is screwed," and of course, Tokyo was screwed. I mean, he just fucking lays waste to Tokyo when he comes back.
Yeah, that
the second time
is like, I mean, to I guess modern audiences. Maybe not as devastating as it would have been to audiences in Japan at the time who were, seeing like the newsreel footage during the World War II time of stuff happening and, people running and all this stuff going on. And then here it is 9 years later, at least when the Japanese cut came out. So that stuff was pretty terrifying for them at the time, even in theaters. And I remember there are some reports I read about people getting up and walking out of theaters during the initial show.
Put it in modern, I know, like old sensibilities, right? But put it in modern context. Like, for instance, something as bad as 9/11 happened here in the United States, 9/11, 2001. 10 years, let's fast forward 10 years later. If there was a movie, which I think they did make a movie, but if there was a movie that correctly depicted everything that we had lived through, it's kind of something you don't necessarily want to see again for a while. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe you want to go in and be entertained by devastation that you just saw. Fairly
I just
fresh.
lived through this. You know what? I'm good. Maybe give it a little bit more time. So yeah, I could see why you would. If you were in Japan and had lived through the horrors, you probably wouldn't want to stare at that. But after this, there's this whole subplot which is far better fleshed out in the original Godzilla. But Dr. Serizawa has come up with this thing called the Oxygen Destroyer. Where basically, it's this device that, you put it in the water, and I guess, I don't know exactly how to explain it. It basically just sucks the what oxygen there is out, and, kind of nukes whatever is there. So, they show the example of, puts it in a fish tank, and then, Alka-Seltzer tablets. It kind of melts everything to the bone, right? All the fish, but go from regular fish to, cartoon bone fish instantly.
To the bottom.
Yeah. So basically he's but he didn't want anybody to know about this. He tells Emiko because there's a love triangle going on. They're apparently, exes, and she's about to get married to this other guy. But he confides that he has made this thing, but don't tell anybody. Okay. That's not coming back. So of course it comes back when she's like, you know what? Godzilla just came in here and just raped Tokyo. I know a guy that's got a weapon that might be able to take him out. So, there's a back and forth about that. And then eventually they're able to use this thing. They convince him to use it, but he's like, this is going to be a one-time use. We can use it, but I don't want this to get in the wrong hands, which we can only imagine at that time what they're referring to in Japan, right? We don't want this thing called the Oxygen Destroyer to get into the wrong hands. They should probably stop the movie right there, pull up his eye patch and wink at the camera and then put it back down and keep going. But he's one time use, so he burns the formula and then they use it. And of course, it takes out Godzilla. But Dr. Serizawa does sacrifice himself.
Yes. Or did he sacrifices himself for absolutely nothing?
Yeah. So he takes out Godzilla at the end. Now, of course, we know they made 35,000 more Godzilla movies. So we know that did not really take out Godzilla. But for the purposes of this film, and sequels weren't necessarily a big thing at the time, I assume they probably just figured well, that was a good movie. We'll never do that again. The end. And then what? A year or two later, they have to figure out how to get out of that. But
once they realized how it was to be made in Japan as well as all across the world, because I think that American cut, it did so well in America. So we don't know the actual box office, but we have those numbers, and it did very well that other Western countries wanted to take that cut and show it in their countries as well. So they had to get a deal with Toho to, I guess, release this movie in all over the rest of the Western world, I guess.
Oh yeah. I mean, just about the time frame of it, Godzilla, the original comes out in 54, right? This one comes out in 56. Well, in between, Toho had already made another one, Godzilla Raids Again. That came out in 55. So they basically had a hit on their hands and realized, oh shit, we need to make another one. Basically less than a year later or immediately, they're like, okay, well, we're got to retcon the hell out of that, and Godzilla didn't die, folks. It's been a while since I've seen Godzilla Raids Again, so I can't tell you how they brought him back, but he's back.
A little bit for me too. I can't remember if it was well, I don't want to speak on it without not remembering exactly if it was supposed to be that same Godzilla or something else.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might have been like, it's not that one. Like, oh yeah, by the way, there are other monsters kind of thing, and then here's another Godzilla kind of thing. But yeah. There you go. That's Godzilla King of the Monsters. I mean, I think overall for me, it's it's vastly different. I hate to keep bringing it up, but like I really think you kind of need to see both.
Yeah,
the original Godzilla and this, to kind of get the full picture here of what's going on. Because I think by and large they're basically the same movies, but the themes are completely different. The storylines are completely different. So I think if you go check out that original, I think you'll enjoy that one as well. So.
Oh yeah.
That being said, my star rating for this one, I mean, this is probably one of the ones, at least, that I probably would have watched as a kid that really got me into Godzilla movies. So, for me, although I do think the original Godzilla is a better movie, I'm going to go 4 stars. I'm going to go 4 stars for this one. I really love this movie, although, there's a lot of silliness with it, but 1956 and everything, so... you're grading on a curve a little bit. So yeah, I say 4 stars. So, Donnie, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm not quite there. But I am, I did enjoy this movie. This is actually the first time I've watched this, which we've talked about. But like yourself, I like the original Godzilla much better than this one, but talking about King of the Monsters here. So, I'm going to go 3 1/4.
Let's see. I think I'd go about.
Look, this is an audio podcast. If only you could see what was going on right now, you'd see that Godzilla himself has made an appearance to tell us what he thinks.
I'm fully
dressed.
Oh, you're talking about something.
Oh, good Lord, no.
But yes, I think I would. I kind of echo your statements, Josh, on this movie. As far as, I like the original Japanese version a little bit more. But I mean, the one with Raymond Burr is fine, and that was the way I first saw it. And growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, I don't remember what station it was on, but TBS, WGN, I don't know. They used to always show Godzilla movies.
Yeah. Yep.
And I became a fan of Godzilla during that time. Just anytime they were on one of those cable networks, I'd watch it. And rental age, whenever we finally got a VCR a little bit later. Godzilla movies were one of the things I rented a lot of. So I can't go any lower, I don't think, than a 4 as well for this one. And I mean, like I said, you're rating. The Japanese one a little bit better, but I mean, we're not rating the Japanese one here, but I'll just go with 4.
I'm sure, I guarantee we will get to that one at some point in the podcast. Not during the Summer Disaster. We've got everything all planned out, but at some point we will get to the original just to kind of compare. Because I think that's really the only fair thing you can do to either movie, because they are different but the same. So yeah. I think we all we definitely recommend this one, but I think we all kind of also recommend you should go check that one out as well. It's good. If nothing else, it's a good companion to compare. So, so that leaves us with a consensus for us, without Will's take, of 3 3/4 stars. So we say definitely go check it out. We highly recommend it, especially if you love just old school monster movies. This is one that the King Kong, Mothra, all the stuff that kind of got spawned out of this Ghidorah, and I'm blanking on the turtle. What was his line of movies?
Gamera.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of these. I love watching all these things, and like you said, I grew up watching these things. So yeah, these hold a special place for me. So yeah,
and they turned around and influenced a lot of American movies later on.
Yeah,
stuff like Inframan, pretty much forming the Power Rangers out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, cool stuff. We definitely recommend you go check it out. So, Donnie, I guess we'll start with you.
Connections from the crypts.
And let it finish out. All right, so probably a big shocker here. There were no crew connections from... for past Spook Show episodes, but there was one cast connection. James Hong He voiced a couple of different characters here. But he also was in past Spook Show episodes, Missing in Action and Ninja 3: The Domination.
Nice.
Because I remember you saying when we did Ninja 3, you're like, of course James Hong's in this.
Yeah, well, I think that we said that. The dude's been in like 800 movies. So like,
of course.
Yeah,
So,
I remember now that you said that's a good call, for this. But I do remember seeing that, and I meant to mention it because it was him and another guy. Basically, it was another Japanese American actor.
Yeah,
they basically
Ishimoto.
they did all the dubbing for this. Like even like I guess maybe outside of maybe the female part, I'm not sure about that one, but pretty much all the English, Japanese English translation dubbing, they did it. They just stuck them in a room one day and just said, "All right, you read all the younger parts and you read all the older parts," and then they just adjusted the voice. But yeah, James Hong, that's awesome. Will's not here for the kill count, which one like this, good Lord, that's an indefinite amount, right? Like that could be not infinity, but that could be like hundreds of thousands of people died in this movie with one like this. But we have to narrow it down to just one. Let's talk about the kill reel.
Highlight kill.
And normally what we do here is I'm the one that has, all right, here's the highlight, and that's it. I'm going to kind of leave this one open for discussion, but I'm going to say what I think it is. I think it's just Godzilla. Godzilla being killed with the oxygen destroyer. I mean, like, that has to be the most, because so many people died. There's not really one that necessarily, and this isn't a gory movie or anything because it's 1956, so the worst you get is what, somebody getting stomped on or something like that. So like,
or breathed on.
Yeah. So I say it's Godzilla being, killed or destroyed by the oxygen destroyer. But do you guys have one that you might want to mention that sticks out?
Oh man, for me, it's the when he breathes on that car. He breathes on that car. The car bursts into flames, and then just I can't make the sound. Yeah. I rewound that about a dozen times. That was my favorite kill.
Do you have one that sticks out, Smoke?
Well, the one that Donnie mentioned. Of course, Godzilla is the big guy getting oxygenated. I don't know or deoxygenated.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, but yeah, that one was pretty damn unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you see so much carnage in this one; it's hard to peg one down. But I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Godzilla biting the dust there at the end, although we know in some form or fashion he comes back less than a year later. But nevertheless.
Gore score.
Oh, yeah, as you mentioned, this is 1954/1956 that we're talking about here, so there's not going to be any massive amounts of gore. I guess if you had to, pin it down, you'd say maybe Godzilla himself being deoxygenated, whatever, and the fish in the tank when the doctor first demonstrates this device he has and what they use on Godzilla later. You get just fish bones. I mean, that's not really gory, I don't think. But for this movie in the time, I guess it was. Oh, for the girl in the movie, it was pretty traumatic, I guess, right? I can't remember her name now, but she was pretty traumatized by the fish. Getting
yeah. Emiko, when he shows her and she's just like horrified to the core because the dude just melted some fish.
And then there's the aftermath, like I said at the beginning, where we work our way back to the end, find out what happened at the beginning, or Godzilla decimated the city. And there's some people with maybe some blood on them from the aftermath or whatever. So, but nothing to real speak of gore wise. I don't know. Should we even give it a 1 or should I give it a 0? I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll give it a 1 to give it something.
It's not gory, but there's violence. Obviously, you see half a one of the biggest cities in the world burn. So there is something there. It's just, not necessarily gory. I agree.
Yeah, this gets stomped on where you see the foot coming, and the scream or whatever. But I mean, of course, you don't see the aftermath of him lifting up and scraping his foot off or something or whatever. But,
yeah. This isn't like Midsummer a couple of weeks ago where, this dude just took a header off a cliff. Let's take a hammer and bash his skull in and then zoom in on it, make you watch this for a second. It's nothing like that.
Nah, so I think a 1's fair.
Yeah, I think so. As far as the usual aggregates that we discuss here, over on IMDb, it gets a 6.3 out of 10 stars. That's, the community rating. Metacritic, Metascore of 60. That's out of 100, so that's pretty good. And over on Rotten Tomatoes, 83% on the tomato meter, although not certified fresh, but still 83% on the tomato meters. Really good, and not far down on the audience score, 73%. So by and large, I think the critics and the audiences agree with what our assessment was. Is that it's a pretty good monster flick, and we all recommend you go check it out if you haven't seen it. So there we go. That's how we kicked off the Spook Show Summer Disaster. I think it's a good way to kick it off is to watch Tokyo burn. So next week, well, we did. I mean,
yeah, but
I'm not stating anything that didn't happen, Emma. I'm not wrong. Next week, we're gonna watch the world burn, motherfucker. We're not just limited to Tokyo here, folks. We're gonna watch it all fucking go down. We're gonna watch Don't Look Up from what was it, 2021? Yeah, it came out 2021. Yeah, the rare Oscar nominated flick for us. So that should be interesting. That's a completely different thing. Although the I guess the political subtext are still there, right? Like there's a lot of that going on here, but
way so than Godzilla. I think.
yeah. Well, I don't know, man. You see that original Godzilla, you might, you'd see more of it than you do here. But yeah, either way, there's, but I think that's a good thing about cinema, is that like the satire, the political subtext. I mean, like, look, everything George Romero ever did had some kind of hidden meaning to it, right? So we talk a lot about that kind of stuff here. We don't get political, but we do. It's hard to ignore some of these things that happen in movies sometime. And my point is this one next week that we're going to talk about is another one of those type of movies. It's hard to ignore some of it. So it's there, and we'll discuss it a little bit. So we're going to be watching Don't Look Up. That one is like kind of I think it was a Netflix release. So if you haven't checked it out, go over to Netflix. You can check it out there. So I guess we'll leave it there for now. And the disaster keeps rolling. It keeps burning. Cities, worlds burn. We're gonna watch it all here this summer. So make sure to stick with us, and don't forget to check out all the stuff we got going over on YouTube as well. A lot of our series, like I mentioned earlier, Video Vortex, Grindhouse Gutter, they're gonna cross over as well. Like our most recent Grindhouse Gutter, I believe, Zombie, Lucio Fulci Zombie. So you want to go check that out over on the YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
So, lots of cool stuff going on. So for Will, who couldn't be with us, Donnie, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All-American Spook Show podcast, and join us next week as the disaster keeps on rolling.
So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight.